Okay, good afternoon or morning, I guess. Usually we meet in the afternoon. And so I'm Sarah Gooding, and I will let our chair call us to order.
Let's go ahead and call us to order. And if you'll start with the introduction of Lance Dixon, please.
Wonderful. As I said, I'm Sarah Gooding. I'm the Real Property Section Manager, and I'd like to introduce the final member of our team, Lance Dixon. He joined us November 28th as our second Real Property Program Specialist, and I'm very excited for the variety of skills and backgrounds and things that this team brings. So with that, I will let Lance share a little bit about himself.
I am Lance Dixon. I've been with the city for 3 years now. I come from compliance and the home partnership program, down payment assistance, and low-income housing subsidy loans for developers. Portion of that, at least, I think we're in discussion about me bringing with me to this role. I have a background in real estate in various capacities. I was a corporate property manager for a regional bank for a number of years. I was also a program manager and business analyst for a senior housing developer and operator here in Wichita. And prior to that, I was an agent and broker in the state of Oregon until I relocated back to Wichita, my hometown. So I think this is a unique opportunity. I'm looking forward to cutting my teeth and helping make this a first-class land bank operation.
Thank you, Lance. Welcome.
Okay, I will note that at this point, we are still waiting on a fourth board member to have quorum. So we are going to delay approval of minutes until that time that we do have quorum. And so we're going to shuffle the agenda a little bit. I hope you'll bear with us because we'll also be shuffling PowerPoints and things like that along the way. But we do want to take any action-oriented conversation at the time when we have board members present. So with that, I'd like to share a few of our observations. Staff watched the tax sale last week. The tax sale was open Tuesday and Wednesday, December 6th and 7th. And so our team sat down and watched what was going to be the final hour. And actually, it was a very, very helpful exercise to get a sense of what that process looks like. So I'm going to forward to that slide. Okay. So we observed through the early evening on December 7th. And while the cutoff time was technically 5 p.m., we noted that 14 sales ended at 5 p.m. As we approached that time frame, we saw that there was actually a clause within it that if a sale had a bid, then it extended for 3 more minutes. Now that was really important to our team to understand. We were envisioning something like an eBay auction where there might be a run up to that very last minute and sniping potentials, things like that. So it was really helpful to get an understanding that there's kind of a controlled environment for those final bids. And so we watched as the remaining 47 sales continued, the final sale ending at 6:47 p.m. We were also relieved to see that those didn't go all night into the next day. And did some data analysis on the data that we saw. And we saw that there was an average of more than 10 bidders and more than 254 bids per property. And I do have a spreadsheet that has all of the data. Roger did the data plugging. And so thank you, Roger. That was a lot of work. So additionally, looking at our analysis, we saw that 61 properties were sold on the tax sale. 12 of those sold for less than what was owed. And that included, the board had really heavily reviewed 3 potential properties for acquisition, had made contact with property owners. 2 of those properties were among those 3 that we had looked at. And so one of the things that staff hopes to take away and research is how many of the properties that are selling for less than the amount owed have CDBG funds invested in abatements or specials or other processes along the way. A quick additional analysis showed that 1 of the parcels that sold for less than the value owed was outside of the city of Wichita, I believe 6 were within or close to our target area. The remaining 5 were scattered throughout the city of Wichita. And so I think this was really helpful to understand what it is that we would be operating in. I think we've done previous legal review and things like that of the statutes, trying to understand maybe how we could build something similar to what Pittsburgh and Crawford County use in southeast Kansas. And we have had some media coverage that discussed the land bank's hope to take in those delinquent properties prior to tax sale, and reiterated that the county is not interested in allowing that. And so we want a good and positive working relationship there. So our goals are really to align our process with what we've seen and to continue legal research in that regard. So we thought, we can deep dive into all the different statutes about tax sales and about who can do what, and that will be an important framework. But we'd like to really take a targeted approach of saying, what would our proposed method or methods for participation be? And within that, like, what can we do? What can't we do? I would say one of our goals would be not to tender cash with those transactions. It could get into quite the logistical back and forth for us to pay in cash the value of what was owed and then have cash come back to the city and back and forth. And so we really do want to have whatever we would do to be streamlined. And so with that, I guess I wanted to share with you some of the questions that we've discussed for future research, and also to get a sense from board members what questions you might add to that research list, so that we can come back to you with a defined strategy and process that has been analyzed for the legal constraints. Hopefully, I would say within a couple of months and well before the next tax sale. So some of our questions include the legal framework for city staff to bid on particular properties, up to the delinquent amount, but with an understanding that cash would not be tendered, and or the conditions under which the board would encourage staff to bid for more than what that amount was, if a property were particularly desirable for the purposes of land bank. I'd also like to find out what fees should we be willing and prepared to pay. We have recording fees, the cost of the sale, things like that. And so our goal is not to get out of paying appropriate fees, but not to have that cash going back and forth, not to be paying back taxes, which we believe we are exempt from. We would like to develop an understanding of the process of what it looks like to give staff authority to bid on the properties. For example, would the Board of Trustees need to name those prices? What would be done in executive session or in public session? And then finally, how can we ensure that we are recouping CDBG expenditures that have gone into tax sale properties? As far as we can tell, we have not received CDBG funds back. And so that is kind of an accounting trail that we would like to explore, because those funds have been invested and we don't want to see them just wiped off the books. And so what other questions would the board like to add to that research scope?
Probably say more specifically, the property that had CBDG dollars in it, did it sell for less than the tax amount, you say? And how much was total tax? How much of that was CBDG money?
No, I don't have all of the numbers right in front of me. I can say one of the properties that we had reviewed was 1610 North Grove. The total cost to the buyer was $3,556. And the total owed was $11,262.07. So there was a deficit of $7,742.07. Another one was 1652 North Volusia. The total cost to the buyer was $4,556. The total owed was $15,476.54, for a deficit of $10,262.07. $956.54. So, and as we look at the properties and the deficit amounts, we haven't yet done the digging and the research, but we suspect that there may be CDBG funds in a number of those. And so I can get more details on those as well.
I think we need to look into those a little bit deeper to see, you know, the breakdown of what was owed, who it was owed to. The other thing I'd love to know is, by watching the auction, could you see who the bidder was? Everything was bidder numbers, right?
It was bidder numbers. They were anonymized.
So it'd be interesting, as we talked before, about going back and looking at past sales to see those properties came up for sale another 3 years later.
Mhm.
Or be interesting to see if one specific bidder purchased a number of those lots for properties. I didn't know whether you dug into that at all yet.
I'll have an update on that as well. What I will say is that once we can identify which properties have been sold on tax sales, and we're still in the process of that, then we can look at who those owners are, at least currently, and if they have come delinquent. So that would be back research that we can do.
It'd be interesting to see if the people that buy them actually record deeds in a timely manner, or what happened.
Sheriff records the deeds, so they'll
Sheriff does, okay, so they
be recorded. So it'll be public.
Then it's a matter of if they get clear title or not.
Well, I would guess most of them will not get clear title for a period of time, so.
It'll be quitclaim deeds. Sheriff.
It's a quitclaim deed, and then after 91 days, then it will be filed with the appropriate places, so that their quitclaim deed will be filed in 91 days. And the sheriff is the one who takes care of all of those things.
They wouldn't know until they went to go sell the property, then they would probably know whether or not they could sell it with title insurance.
That'd be, I would assume they'd go talk to a title company. Once they get,
Because they won't do any preliminary title work. That's the problem with those sales. They won't do any anymore. They used to, and then they stopped doing it because they don't want to have any liability. So I don't know. That's where we're trying to figure out how to buy these, and then, you know, it's such a hard thing to do, to buy something when you don't know if you have all these things outstanding come back to you. So that's what we're trying to get across. So our whole goal here is to get these in here and buy these without having to pay off these taxes, to get a solid, basically, flow from one entity to the other from the land bank. That's our main goal, right? To get these
Yes.
properties bought and then not having to pay off the back, and then they become property of the land bank.
I'm looking at Sally. She's a little bit more familiar with some of those legalities than what I am.
By statute, the county could transfer those properties to the land bank, and as a land bank, the back taxes are automatically by statute removed. So that would be the ultimate position for us to be in.
our goal is to get those properties in the hands of somebody that can make a payment or build houses on them.
Exactly, because we are piloting the land bank with CDBG funds. That means that the end result of that property has to be CDBG eligible. So our primary focus is affordable housing. We leave that little caveat there to say, if there was an opportunity for another CDBG eligible project for the property, we could definitely consider that. So if there was land assemblage that could bring in a grocery store and a food desert in a CDBG qualifying neighborhood, that is absolutely something the land bank could consider. But, it has been pretty clear that, our first goal is really about trying to take those properties and making additional affordable housing in our community.
And so I would like to reiterate that we would like a positive working relationship with Sedgwick County. And we feel like the land bank goals and the county's goals are similar in that we're trying to get these properties back on the tax rolls, back into productive use. And I think the land bank actually is able to take things a little further that way through those stewarding the properties back into active and productive use. That includes ensuring that they're cared for, remediating blight. That includes utilizing the underlying infrastructure. I was recently hearing that specials in new development are running about $300 a month. And so obviously that's a huge cost for new development, whereas this infill development opportunity has powerful cost savings as well as better utilization of what's already here. We would like to be able to see improvement of existing structures, building on those vacant lots. That enhances the tax base, and that is a mutually beneficial goal. And additionally, as the housing department, seeing added affordable housing units at a time when we're struggling to find units, and when our voucher holders can't find affordable housing units, we see that the land bank is not only cooperative with the goals, but takes them several steps further. And that's an important thing to note. And so then I'm going to check in. Do we have a fourth board member yet? Okay. We will keep on going. And once I get notice that we do have a fourth board member, we will take action items. And so I also wanted to assert that the tax sale acquisition is only one of a number of strategies that our staff is pursuing. And so even as we're working on tax sale processes, we're also reaching out to property owners in our target area, which is 2 square miles in northeast Wichita. So we've looked at who is currently on the delinquent taxes list who might be headed toward tax sale next year. We've done a preliminary reach out to, I believe it was 19 properties owned by 15 individuals with a letter just inviting them to consider the land bank as an opportunity. Now, 2 of those letters have bounced back, and I have not yet had any feedback from the other 17 letters that were sent out. But we are trying to get word out in that way. And so I wanted to go ahead and share, let's see. Again, PowerPoint was designed for a different order. So within the 2023 tax sale parcel update, and we're no longer looking at 2022 because that one has been conducted. As of last week, there were 258 properties unredeemed in Wichita. I received a report last night that there are 4 more, but I can't verify if they're Wichita, Sedgwick County, so that will be updated. And then of those, 20 are in the focus area. Last month, we had said 21. Now, upon actually site inspection, one of those was on the other side of Grove. And so the reason we'd sent letters out to 19 is that one of those is a landlocked parcel that is on kind of an interior area. And we don't want to actively pursue things that would be very difficult to dispose of. In that case, it was adjacent to a rental property, and we thought side lot disposition may not be the best option for that particular. So these are our 2 miles. My text is a little cut off at the bottom, but the left mile is the north mile, the right mile is south mile, and those tabs indicate approximately where those different properties are. Blue tabs indicate that there is a street address. Typically, there is a structure or was a structure. The red ones are more associated with vacant lots. And so again, we are monitoring those closely and want to at least keep that awareness in people's minds that the land bank could be an option if they don't feel like they can recover that property before the tax sale would occur.
You said there's 19. How many say you're targeting? 20?
Yes,
Would it be helpful if somebody went out there?
it could be.
I volunteered to do that. I got nothing to do. But I would like to go out to a few of them because I like to see what the people, if they actually got the material,
Mhm.
and maybe see what they say to get some feedback. It's, well, we don't have anything. I mean, you're sending this out, you're just mailing it, right?
Yes.
So I want to see if they actually got it.
Mhm.
I don't know if we can take the literature to them. I mean, I'd be knocking on doors. I don't have a problem with it.
I'd say a lot of those properties were rentals, from what I could tell when I drove through.
I think they are.
I think.
Well, we can look on the tax rolls to see where the mailing address is going, and if they're different, then obviously we know that it's probably an absentee. Or
point is that
Yeah.
if you knock on the door, you're probably gonna get the tenant opposed to the owner.
Yeah, no, and we can go through that and try to see what, but they're mailing it to them. They must know that their taxes, but because they're getting it in the mail, right?
No, I think the owner probably gets it, but I think
Mhm. And we could certainly do an assessment quickly of how many the addresses align with both the owner and the mailing address. I think we went out and drove the area, and our site assessment indicated that some appear to be vacant, some probably are rentals. Some
25% are rentals, 25 are boarded up, and the other 50% are lots that have already been, basically, the houses have been destroyed.
The last tax sale we did, previous one, knew 9 of the people that were on there personally. One person had 8 of them, and I know who she is.
Mhm.
So I just needed to go and find her. I mean, I got her number. I could have called her, and probably she would have signed them over.
Mhm.
If I would have had time to go track her down, she would have signed all the houses over to her if I would have been able to get a hold of the sale, but.
And it may be that those personal relationships are very helpful in moving things along rather than simply a letter from the city.
Yeah, so we just got to get some kind of advance notice on some of these. So
I think looking for 2023 tax sale.
Yes, absolutely.
That right.
Yes.
Look at the properties that are delinquent.
When's the next sale? Is it going to be in this time of year next year, or are they going to do 2?
I don't believe that's scheduled yet.
Announce that, yeah.
I know that in the past, they've done 2 or 3 a year, and it can kind of depend on the timing and how they work the cases. I think it had been a while since they had done multiples in a year, and I believe this one was about as late as they will tend to do them. I think normally they said they're targeted the fall months from September through November. And so we will keep a close eye on that. We'll notify you as soon as we do hear a date.
The other thing I observed while driving through the neighborhood is a couple of the lots that went on the tax sale were in neighborhoods where there was a construction company building new houses. There was 5 units under construction or getting ready to be completed. I think we ought to reach out to Gonzalez Construction, who it was. And I think we need to reach out to them and see, who's the owners behind that? Are they the owners? What's their intent on the properties? Or they work with Mennonite Housing or Habitat for Humanity, whoever. But just get a better idea of what's going on, why are they in there developing, which I think it's wonderful. But see how we can work with them, because my thought is if we end up getting any lots at any point, they're the first phone call we make to them, Mennonite Habitat. So just a thought.
Absolutely. And I think that's an important point that as we have not yet taken in any lots, we do want to be somewhat choosy because we want to ensure that lots we're taking in have an end use in mind and an end developer potential. We don't want to just take lots in that then we later find out we may or may not be able to have projects completed on. Excuse me. And so that actually brings up the next parcel that we want you to review. We were approached by the city's real estate team about a surplus property just at the edge of the established central area. This is in the 1200 block of North Hoover. It is city-owned, I believe, from bypass construction over the Big Ditch area. And it was presented as an opportunity to potentially pilot land bank processes. There is an active interest by a developer in putting duplexes in that area. And so it seemed like something that if this would work well, had a lot of potential to allow us to test our processes. Thankfully, we got a lot of expertise within our staff, and Lance was able to jump in and do some initial environmental analysis on it. And so we have run into one snag, and that is that the environmental noise is higher than what would be allowed for some of these types of projects. Lance, would you like to clarify anything on that?
Sure. The decibel noise level for federally funded projects is 65 decibels from the effective distance. This location has 72 decibels at the effective noise distance, which is quite a bit higher and would require, and based on where it's located and the type of noise and the topography of the land, it would require quite a bit of abatement to get it within standards, which I'm not sure would make it feasible.
I lived by the Air Force Base for a long time.
Yes.
Who wants to, somebody wants to buy this or develop it?
I can speak to that. So the city real estate office has been offering this property available for sale. And there's been some interest in it, but
How long has it been for sale?
it's since construction was completed over the big ditch.
Oh, okay.
The property, it has some challenges and it has to be surveyed. It's going to be reduced in size and such. But utilities to the site is another challenge. But we do have a developer who is interested in purchasing the property. Now, whether or not they're going to be interested in doing the work that's necessary to meet the environmental requirements for HUD is unknown. But they would just go in and put some duplexes on there.
So there's a structure on the property now. Is
They
that
get land.
all vacant? Okay.
How big is the parcel? It's a square foot.
I don't remember. Do you recall offhand the parcel size? Is it right in-
70,000 square feet thereabouts.
Not very big.
No, it's not very
I
big.
mean, it's
If you take out the easements,
Yeah. There would be access control along Hoover, and the site would actually be reduced from what you see on the screen.
Square footage is 31,190.
well, that's small.
Is it the estimated square footage when we
That's,
take the right of way out? That's on the county.
that's what's on the county rules.
So it'll actually be less than that because the city will retain the right of way.
The right of way on the north side where the sidewalk, like, I mean, you can't get more than one or two duplexes.
Yeah, I think that's all his intent is as well.
Almost have to give it to them.
We only mention it just because it would be something that we could, we have somebody who's interested in the property. So it's a property that we could just run through the process in its entirety.
I'd run it through.
Well, the issue,
decibel thing is that, now if you do private, it doesn't,
no, it's not going to be an issue. So decibel, we can ask them if they'd be willing to make those adjustments and to develop the property to meet those standards. But if they're not, then we would retain it and sell it just sell it to him outright from the city. So he doesn't have that restriction.
So additionally, I mean, we could run it through the land bank process. We just couldn't expend any CDBG funds on the property and it couldn't yield a CDBG eligible.
Also
outcome.
means maintenance, any type of expenses. So we would, any expenses incurred on it would have to come from another source.
Which could eat into our very, very tiny portion of general funds that we have to kind of supplement funding. It's also unknown, and correct me unless we've had further conversations with the interested party as to whether or not he would be interested in having those duplexes be affordable.
Correct. We don't have that. We have not visited with him about that. So we don't know what his target rents are either.
I think we get the information and make a decision at that point, but personally, I see no reason why the city wouldn't want to sell whatever excess property they have, whether it flies with.
I don't think it's an issue is that the city doesn't want to sell it. It's whether or not this will come to the land bank.
We're going to sell it either way.
They're going to sell it either way. Exactly.
Yeah,
but I have a question on this affordable housing thing, just the word affordable. So I saw something recently in apartments affordable. They're saying one bedroom, $800, $900, $1,000. I mean, is that affordable housing?
It's.
No, I'm just saying, I don't really know what that means, affordable housing, because I mean, to qualify for $900 to $1,000 rent, you have to make 3 times the money. So that's at least somebody making $36,000 to $40,000 a year as one person. So I'm just trying to understand the word affordable, because we just throw it around like
It is defined.
affordable when really it's not affordable to most younger people. Like my daughter, she's 23 years old, graduated college. She can't afford $1,000 a month. There's no way. That's why she's staying in my basement.
CDBG defines affordable housing is in which at 80% of an area median income can afford. So in your circumstance, it's a one bedroom, one person. We'd be looking at the, one person. We'd have to actually look up the income on that. But yeah, you're not looking at the $800-900 a month likely. And when they look at the affordability on housing, you have to also incorporate the utility expenses when making that calculation, which makes it even harder, right? You're seeing.
Right. Because I know you were working on those incentives I saw in the 1,000 you were offering for the section for the affordable housing I saw, which I had somebody ask me a bunch of questions about the other day. So I'll have to talk to you that after the meeting, because they had a lot of questions because they wanted to do it.
At one time for a new landlord, $1,000 is really easy.
Yeah, well, never.
Been a Section 8 landlord before you.
They've never done it before. So they were asking me, one time ago, I used to have like 20 on there, and then it just weaned off of there, but really because of the price of the rent, it kind of went this way and this went this way, and it just couldn't do it. So, but anyway, I'll talk to that afterwards.
I think on this parcel, we ought to do a scenario, what would it look like if we ran it through the land bank process and determine whether or not that's advantageous for us, for the city, and if not, let the city take care of it. I mean, it'd just be a trial.
Yeah, and at this point, there were just a little bit of unknowns. And so that's why we wanted to present it here first today before we had these conversations with the property owners and made any other advances.
We were working to develop that property, and we got it in the land bank where they give us breaks on the stuff for the development, for the sewer and the water, for bringing that utilities in, for what we need to bring into the property to get it functional. Would that be something that would be,
I mean, right now there's.
have to pay straight out for it? It wouldn't be any.
And that's only in those qualified tracks. There's not anything that's going to reduce those other costs.
We will follow up on that one and hope to be able to bring more back next month. Similarly, we also were informed about a number of properties along 13th Street. These are also surplus properties, and they are near or in the target area. Staff review shows that some may or may not be adequate for development. But again, there is the potential to run some pilot processes for side lot disposition, charge a small fee that would allow some seeding of the land bank. And so those are things that staff would be interested in potentially exploring based on the board's guidance. And then Roger had done the assessments on those, so I will let him answer any questions you might have. Let's see, actually, I'm going to go ahead and go forward. Let's see. These are our east parcels. And I believe it's like, yeah, so I'm trying to remember exactly what our cross streets are. We've got a couple of parcels here. And then these are going to be a little bit south of the university here.
South.
Crestway, Astor and Yale.
Crestway is the far right.
Yes.
You have McDonald Golf Course in the middle, and the major intersection to the west is Hillside. So these are just a couple of blocks east of Hillside.
And then our west parcels, also along 13th, are all on the south side of the street. Most of these are right within the target area or just to the west of it. So we've got Chautauqua, 2 or 3 parcels in there. Volusia, both sides of the street. Looks like Spruce and 13th, Hyatt and 13th, and then Minnesota and 13th. Again, some of these may or may not be adequate for housing development, and that would need further assessment, but they again offered a potential to pilot properties through the program.
These are remnant parcels left over from when 13th Street was expanded. So they've been offered on the market for a number of years. There has been some interest in the area, but it's been quite slow. We have sold a couple properties in there, and but we've just been mowing them basically since then. If the land bank were to take them, they would also become responsible for the maintenance of the mowing, dumping, basically.
I don't,
Excuse me, go ahead. But the city would donate them to the land bank.
Yeah, we can ask council permission. I think we have to go to council. But yeah, we'd have to donate.
So potential research that could take place before a decision was reached would be whether there would be interest in the adjacent property owners in owning these properties. Because again, we always want to have an end use in mind before considering taking in a property.
But we've already reached out to the adjacent owners.
nobody's interested. No interest.
We got rid of several. We probably moved 15 off out of the original.
Yeah. I know we have one property owner who is interested. It's finance is an issue for him.
Driven by those many, many, many times, and looked at them and tried to figure out what opportunities there would be. And, also looking at the food desert idea. There's really not enough dirt for anything commercial. And all of the properties basically, to residential. So you just, it's hard to say what we could do with it. There's no reason why we can't look at, the individual properties and, maybe try to come up with ideas, maybe reach out to the adjacent property owners again and just see if there's any interest. Maybe get a hold of Gonzalez Construction or some of the not-for-profits and see if they have any interest, which you've probably already done once.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something we can do again with staff and just see. 'Cause it'd be nice to have some activity along 13th. I mean, there's a lot of traffic coming down 13th. That would at least show that we're doing something.
With addressing the food desert issue, those lots that would not have the decision of being used for residential space or just limited use, potentially look at having community gardens. There, lots, talking to the farmers market, maybe they'd be interested in having that their space. I know that Wichita State University has different, once a month or twice a month, have a community farming, farmers market sense. So just, and that's being on 21st Street, but I think that maybe getting the community together and having that. Lots of part.
The Save a Lot store, that city property,
What is not,
they sold that.
yeah, that, it's gonna be a medical office.
Correct.
I was gonna ask earlier, to what extent are you skip tracing these potential property owners? And you're soliciting them with like the 19 that you identified. Do you have anything set in place? Isn't what your process is? Or following up?
Yeah, so far it has just been that initial sending out the letters. I think we do not have anything in place yet. It's certainly a process we could develop out to say, upon non-response, here would be the next step and the next step. And also, at what point do we take a no answer as a no, or honor that no if somebody is not interested?
They're outsourcing that to expedite the process with their limited staffing, because I know it's one person role all day long.
We had not yet. That's certainly something we can talk about.
I like what we're doing as far as looking at some of these parcels that the city owns, trying to determine what opportunities there may or may not be. I would just encourage you to dig a little deeper and try to come up with ideas of, you know, what can be done, what improvements could be made, and who might be interested in acquiring. Because, you know, at one time, we had a lot of that property on 13th. And some of those, the other thing I think we need to look at is some of the properties we have along 13th Street. Look at the whole block, because there's some of those blocks that only have 4 or 5 houses in the whole block. And I've always thought that maybe there's an opportunity at some point to have park areas and then utilize some parkland that we have in the city for housing development in locations that might work better for housing developments than parks. This is a very visible location. I think it'd be a great park where some of the other areas I've seen for parks are not very visible. Can't see them. There's not a whole lot of activity there, and they may be better for housing and still utilize smaller park area, but have housing that could help benefit the neighborhood. So I would encourage staff to think outside the box and try to figure out what is best for those communities that we have property in.
Good idea. But also consider the question, down a golf course, what's just a lot of space there not being used.
Oh, wait a minute.
Golf with me, I use the whole course.
I use some off the course too. There's not a whole lot of excess land now on it.
No, there really is not.
Parking lot's taking up majority of.
What excess land they had, they created that junior golf academy.
Oh, okay.
So encourage staff to come up with ideas and thoughts, and recommendations for how we move forward on some of that.
Absolutely. Do we have, okay. We may or may not end up being able to do any minutes approvals today based on whether we had a fourth board member who was going to try to attend part of the meeting. And so if not, we'll just continue with updates this meeting and hold those minutes for next meeting. Let's see, I'm going to go backwards in the presentation. Just bear with me for a moment. Okay. We've introduced Lance, we've reviewed the tax sale. Okay, and so another component with the tax sale is that staff is working to try to pull a sample of 10 years worth of tax sale data. We do know what we're trying to get, we just are still working with how to get it. So we had presented a request to the 18th District Court for 10 years of tax sale history. And we were told that that could not be fulfilled as it was a bulk request. When staff went to the court to try to do research ourselves, we understood why. We were getting a lot of hits that were not what we were looking for. And so we have taken a step back to try to develop better search criteria to make sure that we're using time efficiently. So I was able to research legal notices and find tax sale case numbers and dates for the past 5 years. Prior to that, I've received some assistance with compiling a list of all property foreclosure sales from that previous 5-year sample. We currently have about 100 pages of sale information that we need to filter down, and then we will send staff back to try to do that research again. Our ultimate goal is to retrieve a form called the Exhibit D form from each tax sale. Once we can retrieve those, we can analyze that data for which properties have been on tax sales. We hope that we'll receive sales prices, how much was owed in taxes. One of the challenges here is where is this housed? With Sedgwick County, they are specific in their CORA request statute or guidelines that this data kind of has gone through a number of different places and that nobody, I'm trying to say this correctly, that really what the treasurer has is not necessarily the total sale price. Portions of the money get distributed at different points along the way. And so we are having a hard time getting it that complete record. We are committed to getting whatever piece of the record we can through our research and then presenting that analysis specifically to see how many of these properties may be rotating through tax sales or other things that might inform some of our future work with the tax sale process.
Does the county have this Exhibit D form? Is that their form?
I don't know.
We've seen one,
We've seen one at the county.
but what you're saying is it's not necessarily the final version because
Mhm.
it goes through multiple county offices. When we went to register for the tax sale, we asked about this because we came from where we were heading to the district court to their micro office is what it's called, to start to do this research. We ran into roadblocks once we got there, but prior to going there, we actually looked at the document that we needed. It's an Excel document, it's a summary document from each sale. And the thing that it also shows is where the dollars from each sale went to. So, this got paid back to this entity, this got paid back to this entity, et cetera. And so it's a really powerful document. But it looks like what we can pull out of the 18th District Court office is decentralized, whereas we really need that high level centralized Excel document in order to do the analysis.
So we are working through the process, trying to identify where the full document is properly housed in terms of making our requests for that data.
Can you send me a copy of that Exhibit D?
We don't have it. She pulled it out and showed it to us. But the first step is getting I know, it's kind of comical, honestly. I think it's probably in the treasurer's office. I think that's probably where it's housed, or at least that's where it initially starts. That's where that document originates from, out of each sale.
So we are hoping that maybe we'll be able to pull it from the district court, but once we've exhausted a few more options, we may consider proceeding with Cora request. We just need to know how to tailor that request to actually get what we're looking for.
The first thing that we need is actually the case number that's assigned to each sale, which the treasurer's office has actually been helpful in providing
Yes.
Those for the last 5 years, right?
The 2012 through 2017. Through legal publications, I was able to find case numbers for 2017 through 2022. And I believe maybe they used a different publication prior to that, and so they're not archived in the same way.
I think 5 years back is wonderful.
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about 10. Good.
We will start our research with 5, and then if we want to go back further to see cycles, then we can do that at that point.
I think 5.
Kind of hard, just simply because sometimes they just don't make it to a tax sale till they're 5 years delinquent. So if we're only looking at 5 years, we're missing if they're coming back
The
repeatedly.
second time.
Good point. Thank you.
So we are continuing to plug away with the research. I think now that we've got the full staff team, getting everybody up to speed and on board, but I think there will be more capacity to push this forward. See, I'm going to go through and figure out which items we have not addressed yet. Okay, so we had other business and open discussions. And so one other thing that our staff has discussed is basically while we're working internally to get procedures together for how we would intake property, we're also looking at potentially running a couple of mock properties through to test processes so that we are ready, but then also how to spread more broadly word about the land bank so that the tax sales, while it's a common method for acquisition other places, it's not the only method. And so we want to begin discussing with various people who might be able to present this as an option or a possibility. So I wanted to ask you all for marketing ideas, and I'll first share a list of places and ideas that we've come up with and invite anything else that you would like to add to that list as we develop communications materials. We had talked about potentially sending materials with MABCD inspectors so that could be included in any letters that are sent or any visits. Looking at presentations to WABA or the Sedgwick County Board of Realtors, presenting this as an option to probate judges estate planning services, the Bar Association, anybody who works within legal services arena, funeral homes, community service representatives, district advisory boards, and neighborhood associations. Just to try to, we will probably tailor communications materials to the particular type by category, not individually. But I'm very open to other avenues that we should begin to look down for potential donor options.
It's, finding out what the Sedgwick County's mailing schedule is for when they send out their notices to alert the homeowners of tax, going into tax sale delinquency. And then that way, because I know it'd probably be a conflict to send with, so possibly go on that along the lines of when they drop that mailer, just not years. So.
Excellent.
Thought about attending DAB meetings.
Yes.
I would like to hear from DABs what their thoughts would be is how do we penetrate neighborhoods, get the right people, see what's going on.
Another resource that was brought to my attention earlier this week is that I believe MAPD has a map that shows vacant properties. And so at some point, if we wanted to canvass other vacant properties that are not necessarily delinquent or showing up in the pre-tax sale notifications yet, that would be a potential.
Like, I mean, this week there was a property that's going to be demolished. It was discussed at city council. I mean, do we approach those owners, those properties, at the same time to say, we'll donate that to the land bank, or is that something we ought to be doing?
So we actually are made aware of those properties very early on in the process, because once they identify them as prime for demolition, so they've made it through the process, they submit what's called an environmental review request to us, because they're actually using CDBG funds to demolish the property. And so once they submit that request, I think we need to figure out in the process, okay, has it already been slated for demolition, or is it about to be slated for demolition? Where is it at? And then we can determine, we can open up those lines of communication with their office to be able to go in and possibly intercept or send them a letter, or try and contact them if we have the contact information, to say, hey, this is another option for you. Until this point, we're kind of catching everything on the back end, but we can be more proactive at that point. Lance, do you know that when they submit that ER request to you, if it's already been slated for demolition, or generally no? Okay. So there could still be time at that point for us to be able to intercept. And they, over the course of the last few months, they've actually submitted 9 or 10 to us for environmental review requests. So we could start working on those as potential properties.
Using that as a pilot to test on the skip tracing. That's most likely require additional.
Yeah, if MABCD hasn't been able to locate the owner, then our chances are probably slim as well. So yeah, we could definitely.
It's like that's another one we put in early in the process. I mean, it'd be nice if some of those houses didn't need to be demolished. I mean, what I've seen, a lot of them, they've been in terrible state for 3-4 years, and they just continue to deteriorate.
A lot of them post-fire.
Multiple fire, people that are broken into the basement, living in the basement, get warm, they start a fire, and then all of a sudden the house. Yeah.
And another challenge that's been discussed is sometimes the person who's controlling the property, the owner technically has passed and they have not gone through probate or any means in order to get legal control of the property, which really hinders their ability. Even if it was early on, if they had funding to be able to try and make needed repairs, they can't get funding to do that. That's even a problem for our own program. So even our home repair program, if the person who's trying to do the repairs doesn't have legal ownership, we can't help. Definitely a challenge.
The sooner we get to it, better.
So I think as we discuss pilots, to kind of clarify expectations, as I see it, the next 12 to 18 months, we look forward to seeing some things get moving with this. But a lot of it will be piloting new and different processes. I think every means of intake will probably be a matter of kind of building it as we go. And so I do expect that, once we've tried intake one way and then another way and another way, we will find those commonalities. We'll build out some very strong processes that will allow it to be a smoother process. But we do expect some bumpy rides as we begin the processes.
One other question, how do we get to know those neighborhoods even better? Because I would assume that some of those neighborhoods, there's people in those neighborhoods that sort of know what's going on in the neighborhood. And does Mennonite Housing or Habitat for Humanity, do they have connections into those neighborhoods that could help inform us and help keep us current on what's going on? And, if, some lady or guy's in the house and they're elderly and, it's not being maintained. Maybe it's something that we can go in and work with them before they pass, and then all of a sudden you have probate issues. It just seems like there needs to be a lot of work done up front on some of this, and make sure that something does change.
Some of the challenge there is how do you fund that? Because we can't fund that. That would be considered a public service if we're at our CDBG public service cap. Is there other funding for a group or individual to go in and try and work with people pre-probate, get properties and names? That's been asked of us other times to say, who can provide this service and how can it be paid for? Well, we haven't found either.
Mennonite or Habitat, do they do any of that?
I know they do some outreach in their individual neighborhoods that they're working, but it's not, they're not doing it in the sense of trying to work with a family to transfer ownership prior to someone passing, that kind of thing. That kind of activity is not anything we're aware is happening by anybody.
It might be good to know what they're doing and then how we can work alongside, maybe.
Yeah, they're really challenging, particularly in the Rock area, which is part of our target area, in that because it's been going on so long, most of the people who are hanging on to properties, and there are still a lot of vacant properties there, think they're keep holding on to them and eventually they're going to get paid big bucks for them, and that's not really what's happening. And unfortunately, then the properties just sit vacant. They do a lot of outreach to try and acquire what they can.
I don't know what the process here, I'm just a member of the public, I'm not on the board or on the trustee. But first of all, my name is T.D. O'Neill, and I don't know a single person in this room, so I look forward to meeting you all. But one of the things that you just said about the Mennonite housing, their entire goal, and 99% of everybody that we have met that is in this industry in some shape or manner or form, they're not there to equip the homeowners to remain in the home or to equip them to become homeowners. You are exactly right about that. That's not the Mennonite housing focus. But that is why we are here, because we own a construction company. We are in the areas that you are talking about, have those relationships, and one of the things that we have found just over the course of life, education makes a difference, and you don't know what you don't know. So not only do we go in and completely renovate, restructure, build the house, we teach the homeowners how to become homeowners and how to keep their homes and how to create legacy wealth in addition to that. So there is the 1% that actually does that. And that's why we're here, is to find out how we can either partner with you or continue to do these things.
Good question.
Is there other business or open discussion?
Any other questions, comments? If there are none, do we have any other items on the agenda?
I believe we got through everything, and we will bring the minutes back for the November and December minutes back for approval at our January meeting.
So our January 11th is our next meeting at 1:30 here in
Yes.
the room. And with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else. You want to make a motion? Second? All in favor, say aye. Not that we have a quorum, but
No, I was gonna say, it doesn't count anymore.
I think we can vote to adjourn. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.